Hello everyone, it's Sylvia from Fella Tarot. Welcome to my channel and welcome to the festive season. It is officially open. There is a bit of an older tradition in Italy where you kind of wait for the first week of December in order to be, getting into the spirit of Christmas. And I know that it's not like that anymore. I don't necessarily know what is happening in Italy, if they start immediately after Halloween or if they wait for the 1st of December. A friend of mine, for example, says that the elves, so she celebrates with her children, she celebrates the arrival of the elves that, they start arriving on the 30th of November. And so I don't even know anymore what the date should be that you really give in and start celebrating Christmas. In any case, not everyone does, I know that, and it's something that I have actually, let's say, for several reasons, I've not celebrated Christmas for a long time, but especially when it comes to the Christmas tree. I've actually never done a Christmas tree that I remember. I know that I did. I used to when I was little. I honestly don't remember, but I think I must have been like 5, 6, 7 years old, something like that. And then after that, for several reasons, I did not put up a Christmas tree anymore. And this year, after so many years, and with a lot of anxiety, because I do have 2 cats, and as you know, cats love to destroy things, and my 2 are no different. But I thought to myself, you know what, you're just owing to yourself after everything that has happened in the last 2-3 years to just try and recreate as much as possible this festive season, this jolly season. And I thought, okay, well, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And so I went shopping, I bought everything from scratch. And I now do have a Christmas tree. I don't know if it's beautiful. It's beautiful to me. So it's fine. But the reason why I'm telling you this is because the VR that I'm going to show you today is called #Christmas Tree Tarot, and it's a VR to Candy from Candy Soul and Soil. I love the prompts, so kudos to Candy for finding these really fun and lovely associations between what's typical from, let's say, the jolly season and something that you can recognize in a tarot deck. So let's have a look at my choices. So the first prompt is the Dusty Attic deck, a deck that feels like a dusty attic of treasures and secrets. Now, I don't have an attic, and as I explained, the idea behind it is that you should show footage from the place where you store Christmas tree and Christmas tree decorations and in general decorations, tinsel, baubles, the rest of the year. And so I don't have an attic, I do have a storage. However, the fact is I had to buy everything anew. I did not have any kind of Christmas decoration with me from the past, so obviously I would have not stored it in the storage. And trust me, you don't want to see any footage from my storage because it's terrible. And I have a slight OCD, and everything that looks untidy is very, very unpleasant for me, and so I really don't want to put it in a video. Let's put it this way. But what I'm going to show you is the deck. So a deck that feels like a dusty attic deck because it's got a treasures and secrets is the Rain Coast Tarot for me. This is it. It's by Christoph James. There's a couple of editions of this deck, and this is the let's say the white or the light edition. I think that's what it's called in the website. Now, as always, for everything that I'm showing today, I'm going to put the link to the website in the description box below. Now, this deck, it does feel a little bit like the Dusty Attic deck, not because it feels dusty per se, because it's very polished, if you know what I mean, but it feels like it's so full of secrets and treasures, and it resonates on really deep level for many of the symbols that you find on the cards. It is definitely a very busy deck. I mean, I think you can tell. It's also a bit of an odd kind of deck, a bit of a weird kind of deck. And funnily enough, I've just been to the Oddities and Curiosity Expo in Sydney. And you could definitely find stuff like this displayed by all of the shops there. There's so many things that you would definitely want to display on your cabinet of curiosities. I feel like this deck, it's full of surprises. It's full of surprises that you can notice or not. Therefore, I feel more like I don't know, I feel like calling them secrets rather than surprises, because they don't necessarily reveal themselves to you unless you are willing to take your time with the deck and actually look at all of the details. And may I say, there's a lot of cards, not all of them though, there's a lot of cards that have this kind of, how do I call it, black, let's say, part at the bottom of the card. Now, this deck doesn't necessarily, I don't think that it comes with the guidebook. I bought the deck directly from the creator's website. It didn't come with a guidebook, and there wouldn't have been space, not even in the top box, let's say, but there wasn't any option to buy a separate book for it. To my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, there's actually no official guidebook. And therefore, what happens is this. I think that you can actually use your own intuition. If you feel like this deck is showing you something, then go for it. That would be my my choice, to just go for it. Your gut feeling, and my gut feeling tells me that this is a really, let's say, it's a very specific thing. I remember using a lot of binoculars. When we went to Costa Rica, for example, we went to Monteverde, and at a certain point we joined the tour to find a very elusive bird, which is called the quetzal. And the quetzal is very difficult to spot, and I'm talking about 10 years ago, so I have no idea whether you can still spot it now or not. But you'll see groups of people sparse on the mountain, just constantly looking up and straining with that binoculars to see whether they can spot the bird or not. And this reminds me a lot of what I could see. So for once, I was actually looking at the forest through a lens. And it was obviously because I have an objective. But in this case, it looks to me like everything you see is exactly that. It's looking at the world through a new lens. And in many cases, it could be a magnifying lens, but it's just very unique. It gives you a unique interpretation of the world, and somehow you know that the world is not like that. But at the same time, you feel like you can actually look at it and agree with it, agree with what you see. You don't necessarily feel like you have to reject the vision. You don't feel like there's something there that does not belong, simply because there is this part at the bottom that looks like it's a lens. I mean, obviously you need to bear with me with this one, because perhaps you don't necessarily feel like it. You don't feel like you're looking through a lens when you're looking at this part at the bottom, and maybe this to you means something completely different, and that's completely fine. What I mean with that is that I feel as if I were looking through a binocular lens at a world that is somehow different from what I usually see when I'm not looking through a lens. So as I said, I think that the quote cards and majors do not have, let's say, the lower part of the lens. You will excuse me if I refer to it like that from now on, but the minors do. And truth be told, the minors have some really odd scenery. And now I'm just asking myself, okay, why do the creator put this sort of lens, for us to look at the cards that way? It's probably because he usually have an intention. So creators have an intention when they sit down and they create their own decks and they illustrate them, they write about them, etc. But what I think this is allowing me to do is to, one, as I said before, accept what I see and not reject it immediately by saying there is no bird in the world that is actually as big as a person on a boat like that, and also there's no giant as big as a castle, and it appears as if there's actually another giant in the castle because we can see an eye here, and so on and so forth. All of the things that we actually see in this deck are oddities, but you're okay to accept them because of the lens. It's almost as if it were some kind of an introduction to a book that tells you, hey, whatever you're going to read next is going to be fantasy, but you're okay, you're chill with that, right? And I definitely am. Same thing as to see, for example, a skeleton popping up from the beard of the emperor, because yes, why not? And so there's all of the oddities that are represented in the cards become, I love this, that she's actually reading the cards here, the Queen of Candles. All of the oddities that are represented in the cards become secrets. They do become treasures, because there's something that, for me, the reader, has such a powerful meaning. I can assign the meaning that I want to it, and as such, it is my own intuition, it is my own interpretation, and it's indeed very powerful. I also really like the fact that it doesn't feel like you're missing out. So I'm going to explain something about how the brain works. So when there's an overload of information, the brain necessarily tries to have a bird's eye view, for example, first. And then it tries to find the relevant spots. So the relevant things the brain needs to focus on in order to understand what we're looking at. So the images become an electrical signal that travels through the optic nerve, and then it ends up in the midbrain, and that's where we start processing. It's obviously something extremely quick, and we don't necessarily realize that we're doing it. Otherwise, let me tell you, when you start studying the brain, you always think, okay, so now this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening. And you go, thank goodness we don't have any kind of lag between the processes, because it would be seriously very upsetting. So all of these objects in these really, really busy cards actually produce this electric signal, and this signal is sent back to the brain, and the brain starts processing what we see, starts understanding what we see, decides whether to skip some areas or focus on others. But as I was saying, the good thing is that it does not feel as if we're missing out on something. This deck doesn't give you the unpleasant feeling that you, for example, focused on this part of the card and not on this part of the card, and therefore you're missing out on this part of the card. It does not feel like that. What you do feel like is you want to use it again. Let's put it in a different way. So for example, I watched John Wick 4 at least 5 times. And yes, it may have been because it was the most amazing movie I watched this year, but it's also because I absolutely love his story. I mean, his story is fantastic. He's the anti-hero, and Keanu Reeves portrays John Wick in a fantastic manner. And okay, so I'm not gonna spend too much time in saying how much I love John Wick, but the reason why I brought that up is because I had to watch it it might have been 5 times at the movies and then another couple of times at home. So let's say more than 5, and let's leave it at that. And the reason why I did that wasn't because necessarily I had missed something in the plot, which I may have probably, after you watch it 2 or 3 times, you probably understand what happens, and you don't really need to watch it one more time. The reason why I did that is because there were so many details that I felt like I wanted to see again. I wanted to be able to have the opportunity to focus on them. And the first time I watched it, I was taken by the story, and I was trying to hang on for dear life with everything that happened, and therefore I couldn't necessarily focus on something smaller. And that goes for the second time and the third time. But then after that, it becomes the reason why you watch it, because you always find secrets, you always find different layers, and all of these become a treasure for you. And I feel like this deck is exactly like that. So there are so many layers. These symbols represent a new way to look at the cards. And you can still read with it, even if it's the first time ever that you set eyes on this deck. You can still use it, you can still read it. Obviously, maybe refer back at your knowledge of the RWS, because in many cases the cards don't necessarily stick to that meaning. But then the second time, the third time, the fourth time, and so on, it gives you so much more when you use it. So this definitely is my choice for the prompt, the Dusty Attic deck. And the second prompt is the Christmas tree structure deck. Tell me about the key tarot structure you love. I'm sure you know my Christmas tree. This is Please Be Kind, because as I said, I haven't done a Christmas tree that I can recall. I'm sure I did, but it's just I don't remember. So this could be probably, I don't know, very basic, and it doesn't, we didn't even spend that much money on it because I wasn't even sure that I was gonna go through with it or not. But in the end I did, and I'm actually kind of happy that I did, because, and I'm just, just so you know, not all cats are destroyer of Christmas trees. My two are completely disinterested. They could not care less. That when I put it up, they looked at it, they sniffed it, they look at me, and then they just continue doing what they were doing, which is napping most of the time. Let's have a look at the deck now. For me, the Christmas tree structure deck is the Tarot of the Abyss. This is by Anna Torian. It's one of my favorite decks. If you watch my channel, you'll know. Even though this deck is in black and white, which is, it's not necessarily a black and white. I feel like saying that it's, a bit of a creamy white, so it's not a chalk white, but in any case it's bichromatic, and I really like it. And if you, as I say, if you watch my channel, you will know how much I like it. But it's also because this deck gives you the possibility to switch between two cards. There's one alternative card to the Three of Swords, and there's one alternative card to the Ten of Swords as well. And that gives you the possibility to read in a numerological way, which I'm very grateful for to Anna for giving us this possibility, because not many decks actually give you that. So there might be a deck that is all about the numerological meaning of the Three and the Ten of Swords, and they don't show you a pierced heart. Let's say there's more decks like that, thank goodness, lately. But perhaps they don't have the alternative card. So this deck will show you the traditional way to read the Three of Swords with the pierced heart, but also gives you an alternative card that you can use if you read numerologically like I do. And for this reason, this is definitely my pick for the key structure, let's say, that I love so much, because it gives me that opportunity. But it's also because many of the cards really reflect what my take is on tarot. The way in which I approach tarot is reflected through, for example, the expressions on the characters. It's reflected also through the choice of the symbols that are around in the cards. And there's so many things that resonate with me. There's so many ideas that definitely match my own and make me feel as if I were at home. So this is a structure that I really, really appreciate. It is a key structure for me because it is one of the decks that I actually like to use whenever I'm teaching tarot to beginners. And I know that it's not necessarily a beginner's deck, but why not? I mean, why do we always have to use the RWS, as a beginner's deck? Of course, you will refer back to the symbols. That's teaching about history. But in this case, when you want to teach about the symbols and the meanings of the cards, I think it's very it's stimulating, you know, for the brain to have a look at these cards, because they are so very well done. And I've heard a lot of people saying that, for example, the Eight of Cups of Autovolo, the representation of the Eight of Cups, this is the best one, and I have to agree, because in this case, the person that is leaving the situation that is probably broken behind is actually coming towards us. It's actually looking at us, breaking the fourth wall, and asking us to engage, to understand why they're doing this. And I love the fact that they're also tipping over the cup, showing finally, once and for all, that the cup wasn't empty. The cup wasn't empty, because there's a lot of interpretation around, and even mine sometimes, saying that they leave the situation behind because the cups were empty and there wasn't anything else left for them. However, in this case, we see that the cup is full, was at least full before they tipped it over. And I love that, because it means that you don't necessarily leave a situation only because there's nothing left for you. You leave it because you want to, no matter what the situation is. If it feels like you have to leave, you have to leave. And so I'm so very grateful, you know, for this card. This is the Ten of Swords I was talking about. It's such an amazing way to look at the wisdom, because this is the culmination of the suit of the mind and the thoughts and everything that this person has been through, you know, throughout the suit. It's reflected with the wisdom that is symbolized by the owl. And I just really love this. So this is my choice for the Christmas tree structure deck. Now the next prompt is the Tinsel Deck, a deck you get wrapped up in, and using it can make you forget about other decks. Now then, these are my tinsel in the Christmas tree, as you can see. Now if you watch my channel, you probably can guess what the deck is that I'm going to show you for this prompt, because this is a deck that ever since it entered my collection, it literally made me so obsessed that I forgot about my other 400 and something decks. And it is indeed the Tarot Landscape, Francesca Matteoni and Yoshi Mari. I love this deck so much. It's one of those decks that come to you once in a lifetime, maybe twice, and it just stays with you, because you find so much about this deck that you always go, oh yes, of course, and oh, look at that, that's amazing, and oh, that's a really interesting way to look at this card. So it's the tinsel, because it really wraps you up. It's like a tentacle. Although I don't want to make this kind of comparison, because obviously it's a bit odd, but you know, I think of tinsels as something that obviously you put around the structure of the tree, and on the one hand it represents the beauty of it, because it's one of the things that sparkle in a Christmas tree, but on the other hand it's true that it's actually wrapping the tree up. And I really think that this is what this deck has done to me. There's been a lot of moments that we share together. There's been a lot of bonding. There's been so much going back and forth, for example, when looking at cards, looking at the guidebook, because okay, just an introduction of this deck. If you don't watch my channel, you will probably not know, but this deck represents actual landscapes. So for example, this one is in one of the islands in northern Scotland, which I almost made my way through, but I had to stop. But it was February last year. It was too windy and the ferry wasn't going, so I had to stop in the Isle of Skye, which is absolutely amazing. So that was really, I'm not complaining. But so these ones are all actual landscapes, and whether it's something that the creator has seen with their own eyes, or is something that they have heard about, you know, histories, stories from people that, you know, just recount what they've seen. And this one, I'm pretty sure, is in Indonesia, in the island of Flores. If you're not familiar with Flores, it's the island the major island, let's say, where you need to go to if you want to see Komodo, if you want to go to Komodo Island. Now, I don't know, to be honest with you. I heard that we're going to close access to Komodo Island for tourists. Thank goodness we made it on time to still be able to go there and go around and see the Komodo dragons. However, you can find Komodo dragons in other islands as well. You don't necessarily have to go to Komodo Island to see Komodo dragons. But I remember even then, it was kind of dangerous because a Japanese tourist the week before we were there had been bitten. And mind you, everyone says, okay, you need to respect nature, and I'm absolutely with anyone who says that, because I've been traveling a fair bit, and let's say that the times in which something have gone wrong were because I was being either too nosy or, you know, irresponsible somehow. And so that person was bitten, unfortunately, because they had approached the Komodo dragon way beyond the safety limit, and that had been bitten, unfortunately. But if you happen to go to Flores, it's a wonderful place. It's really a wonderful place. And this one is, let's see, so it's a story that Francesca heard about someone talking about it on Instagram. And this is basically an octopus. This person saw an octopus hitching a ride out of a jellyfish, as you do, you know, which is so very cute. So you see why this deck really, it kind of kidnaps you, in the sense that you don't need any other deck, because there's so many beautiful things to look at. There's so many beautiful symbols, and the stories behind it are absolutely amazing. But it's also because it's a very great, I would say it's a great reader. The stories behind are wonderful, but they're not necessary. Like, you don't necessarily have to know the stories behind to be able to read with this deck. If you know, for example, your RWS, you can use that knowledge in order to be, you know, talking about the cards, etc. But why would you? I mean, there is a book, a guidebook, for a reason, and the reason is because you cannot possibly, if you're a deck creator, you cannot possibly write everything on your deck. And sometimes there's decks that use keywords, which is excellent. Actually, I really like that. I appreciate that. But on the other hand, there's others, you know, unless you're doing an oracle, you're making an oracle deck, generally speaking, you don't find keywords on tarot decks. And so the images are all you have in order for you to be able to express a story, to tell a story to the reader. And so when you are the reader, it is your duty to understand the story that the creator wanted to express behind the images. Now, whether you want to use it or not, it's a different story. Don't get me wrong. It's not like you have to study every single deck you have. I mean, I have over 400 decks. And if I had to do that, honestly, I don't think I would have time for anything else in my life, even though I have been collecting for a long time. But still, you know, sometimes you forget. So what I mean with this is that obviously when you want to enjoy a deck, and you really want to, let's say, let yourself be wrapped up in it, you probably want to reach out for the guidebook. That's all I'm saying. And I know that it's a debate. I know that there's a lot of people saying, I don't need the guidebook, especially when the guidebook is not big, if it's a little white book. And I agree, if it's a little white book and it's got nothing more than the usual keywords you associate with the cards anyway, you know, okay, it's fine. But don't make the assumption. At least check it out, because perhaps it looks like a little white book, but maybe it's still customized to the deck you're looking at. So that is my recommendation and my gift for Christmas to all of you. Please check out the guidebooks, because you never know the treasures you can find. So this is the Tarot Landscapes, and it's my choice for the Tinsel Deck. A deck you get wrapped up in, and using it can make you forget about other decks. So the next prompt is the Bauble Deck, a deck that keeps rolling around and turns up over and over in your practice as you reach for it all the time. And these are the baubles on my Christmas tree. I do have different size baubles. That's the only concession that I made to the difference in price of the decoration. But when it comes to the deck, and again, if you're familiar with my channel, you definitely know, especially if you're a client of mine for readings, you will know this deck by heart by now, because I use it all the time, to the point that even the box, which is a sturdy one, I can assure you, is showing signs of wear. This is the Savvy Soul Tarot by Julie Whitelish. It was a Kickstarter from last year. We're still in 2023. I keep on thinking that we're in 2024 already, but we're not. So this is my Bauble deck, because it does show up, it keeps on showing up over and over again, and I use it all the time, and it's just so beautiful. And if you're not familiar why, the reason why I love this deck so much, I will tell you. It is because in each and every card there is something that reminds me of myself, of my life experiences. It resonates so much with me that I am willing to go with it. I am willing to be guided by this deck. Whenever I do a reading with this deck, I feel like the deck is taking all the decisions, and it's literally showing me the way, taking my hand and walk together with me, not necessarily ahead of me, not necessarily behind me, but always, you know, in step. And that's an important thing, and I'll tell you why. Because if you don't have a deck like that in your collection, it means that you probably should have a good look at your collection and make some choices. And that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, rehome a few decks or buy new decks. I'm not saying that. But I highly recommend finding a deck that really speaks to you of yourself. And it's amazing because every time I use this deck with someone else, with a client, with a friend, for example, they tell me the same thing. They literally go, oh yeah, of course, this is very understandable for me. This is very cozy. This is very, you know, it speaks to me of myself. This is referring back to my own life. Yes, I have done this, or yes, I have seen this happening, or the energy of this card is very understandable for me. There is so much that resonates in these cards for all of us, not just myself. That's what I wanted to say, that you don't necessarily need this specific deck, but you need to find a deck that will make you go, oh yeah, of course, I know what you mean. So this deck unfortunately is out of print now. There were a few copies left, and this was a Kickstarter. It has never been reprinted. It is a pity because, to be honest with you, I really believe that it's, I don't know, it's got everything. Every little thing is just absolutely perfect about this deck. And it is a pity that there's not more copies, you know, in circulation around, but it is what it is. And sometimes that's what makes a deck, you know, so coveted and so sought after, because there's not that many around. If it were picked up mass market, I guess people would be more like, okay, I can get it anytime I want. So it's, you know, you take your time when you want to buy it, when you want to find it. But definitely, this is my Bauble deck, because it really, you know, it makes me feel that I just live in the cards, or the cards are my memories, or they reflect what I think about things, and I just really enjoy them and love this deck so much. And the next prompt is the Snowman Deck. So the Snowman Deck is a deck that melts your heart. And I had to say that I don't have snowmen in my house as Christmas decorations, so I'm showing you the gnomes, because the gnomes, you know, they melt my heart as well. So I had to look at my collection a couple of times when I wanted to decide what deck to pick for this prompt. And the reason is that there's more than one deck that actually melt my hearts, and they don't necessarily have to be cute decks. I think that by heart melting, we look at something that makes us emotional, and if we, if I look at my collection through those eyes, then there's definitely a lot of picks that I could have shown you now. So the one that I decided to go with is the Green Grief Tarot, which is from the Green Glyph. Sorry, I keep on saying Green Grief. It's the Green Glyph Tarot from the Green Glyph collection. This deck is by James R. Eads, which is also the creator of for example, the Prisma Vision, the Cosma Vision, and other decks. I love this deck. I really like everything about it. It's, first of all, because I absolutely love glyphs as in symbols. I love sigils, for example. I like studying stuff, so of course I love symbols. I love Enochian language, and I study all these kind of things. And when I went to Egypt last year, I even, did a short course to understand hieroglyphs because because I'm a geek, because I'm a nerd. But I really, really do appreciate this deck, and I love everything about it. As I said, it's a really good production value, even though I have to say the book doesn't necessarily have a lot of writing per cards, but I don't mind. It does have a description and then a few keywords for the upright meaning, and then a few keywords for the reverse meaning, which is absolutely what you need. You don't need much more than that. Unfortunately, my box is a little bit, as you can tell, it's a bit damaged. Probably got damaged during the transport, but it's okay. And this is the deck. So it's a somewhat smaller deck, as you can see. But that's also a good thing for me because, I've got problems with larger decks. I love this deck so much. I love the Muto color palette, but the fact that the color association is so very unique. You would never think about associating the greens and the orange and the yellows, but yet it actually works. I like that there's a bit of a minimalism going on. There's a lot of attention to the symbol. For example, this is the Six of Wands, and it shows as if it were the incoronation. So it's a way to show the most important symbol of the deck without necessarily showing you the whole scene. So would I say this is a, let's say, a pippish deck or a scenic one? It's a way in between. Obviously, if you look at the Two of Swords in this case, it is scenic. It's not, but it's not fully scenic, and I don't know if that makes sense or not. But this is the reason why this deck actually melts my heart. And it's because in the Suit of Cups, we've got elephants. I mean, look how cute they are. And this is the Four of Cups. So obviously it shows you also the meaning of the card itself. But at the same time, it shows you the sweetest animals on earth. I really, really love elephants. I think that it's probably, I love all animals. So obviously, I cannot tell you whether it's my favorite animal or not. I don't think it is. I think that I still love tigers as my favorite animal, but they are very, very sweet. And last year, not this year, sorry, I keep on referring to 2023 as last year. No, it's still this year. So this year I think we were in August, we went to Sri Lanka and we went to Udawalawe, which is a national park. Immense, really fantastic, beautiful, gorgeous. The elephant population is just really abundant there, and they had just had a couple of months before they had a baby elephant, which is one of the cutest things on earth. If you see a baby elephant nursing, it just, you can't not, melt. It is for me, it's the experience that melts your heart. And I've seen elephants everywhere. I've seen elephants in Asia. I've seen elephants in Africa. I love them all. Whenever we see elephant in a place, it just makes me happy. And I remember that was an incredible experience. But what happened was that driving back, because we were staying in Kandy, And driving back, it was a couple of hours drive, and at a certain point, it was dark. It was dark because, you know, we had stayed even a bit too long in the park. And so it was dark when we were driving back. And at a certain point, by the side of the road, and I mean a normal road, not even through a reserve. It was just a road. It was a normal road, like any road where there's cars and motorbikes and, you know, not necessarily people, because it was not in a center of the city. It was not an urban kind of road, but it was still a normal road. There were two young elephants courting, and it was the sweetest thing I've ever seen, because I know if I find the footage, I obviously took a video, so if I find the footage, I'll make sure to just show you maybe a few seconds. They were not just courting, they were being so sweet. And I know all the dynamics, I know the biology behind it, I know the use of pheromone, I know the use of, you know, the smells and the fact that obviously they were both in heat. So I know that stuff, okay? We all know that stuff. But why not, for once, just give in to the romance of it and the sweetness of it? Because at a certain point, believe it or not, their trunks actually started sniffing each other. And they actually did this shape, so the shape of a heart. And that was the sweetest thing I've ever seen. Obviously, they don't know what a heart is. You know, they don't have the concept of feelings being recognized in the heart like we humans do, and yet that was what happened, and it was absolutely amazing. And so every time that I look at this deck, which I received after seeing this, by the way, I felt like elephants were even more cute than what I remembered. And I just absolutely love that the suit of cups shows you the elephants, because they were capable of that. I mean, it was something, mating is not romantic in the natural world. It's just not. And yet, I don't know why, and who am I to deny what I've seen? I have seen tenderness. I have seen, and also nothing, I don't know if you, okay, let's just say this. When I was in Africa a few years ago, I witnessed a lot of mating between lions, for example. It's a very brisk and efficient affair, okay? It's very, very, okay, you know, go there, do your thing, get out. And I just somehow, there's nothing romantic about it, but that's fine. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I get it. It's mating. They do it for a reason. Fine. And I'm okay with that. But then seeing those two elephants looking at each other, sniffing each other like that, approaching each other with kindness, and also very slowly, by the way, nothing, you know, super practical and very swift. I don't know, I feel like I have actually witnessed something unique, and I know that it's not, I know, because you can watch it on whatever, National Geographic channel, you know, the Animal Planet channel, I mean, and YouTube anytime you want. And as a matter of fact, having worked with a National Geographic photographer for 4 years, I am used to these kind of things, because Jason used to talk about this stuff all the time. Of how nature is absolutely raw and really does not, you know, jive with what we humans think about it. But that moment, seeing those elephants, it was the highlight of the whole holiday. So this deck is my choice for the prompt, the Snowman, a deck that melts my heart. Okay, so the next prompt is the Handmade Deck, a deck that's made extra special because of who made it, or a deck that feels particularly handmade. Now, I don't have any handmade decoration, but what I'm going to show you is, you know, the decoration that I've got on my table. So they're pretty much something that I really, really enjoy, even though they're not necessarily Christmassy. and I know for a fact that you know, one or two have actually been handmade. But the deck that I chose for this prompt is Le Tarot de Paysage Intérieur. So this is a French deck, as you probably imagine. And if you watch my channel, you will know about this deck. And may I just say, this deck, I have followed the production, the creation of this deck from Camille. Camille is the creator. Camille's Instagram page. Because my interest got piqued immediately when I saw her working on it, and I absolutely love it. And when I saw that the first edition was available, you know, I just had to have it. Now, this deck, I also wanted to show you the bag, because the bag is 100% handmade. I got this bag specifically for this deck, not necessarily because the image on the bag reminds me of the deck, but because, I don't know, this is the symbol, the traditional symbol of the lucky cat. However, I bought this bag in a community in close to Chiang Mai. Not in the city center, let's say close to Chiang Mai, probably 10-15 kilometers away, where it's an artisanal community where women, you know, even kids, they make things, and then they sell them to gather funds for, you know, studying or to have an independent life, etc. And so it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, and therefore, and I know for for a fact that it's a handmade bag. So I really like this bag. But let's have a look at the deck. So this deck is amazing. I know, by the way, that now Camille is working on a bit of a remaking of the major arcanas on this deck, and I'll make sure to put her information in the description box below for anyone who wants to check out her Instagram account, because following on the process of going through the repainting is really mesmerizing. I love this deck because of this card, because of the Three of Swords. And if you're familiar with my channel, you heard this story a number of times, so I apologize because it sounds as if I'm kind of obsessed, which I am. I love the fact that this person is thinking so much and overthinking, and it's lost all kinds of control over things, right? And that's what it feels to me. The numerological way to read the Three of Swords is the growth in the suit of the mind, and growing after the Two of Swords represent the being completely letting go. You just let go, and you don't resist the worry anymore. You just pace around, and this person paces around so much that they actually created a hole. Now, this is exactly what I do. This deck speaks to me, because when I'm worried, I tend to pace around the table. That's me, literally. And I've heard, every time that I talk about this deck, I hear a lot of people commenting on it as well, and telling me, for example, that they also love the fact that there's two swords pointing at the person's head, and one sword is actually pointing outwards, and that's very symbolic for me. Because it's true that we have external element making us worry, but it's also true that at least 33% of that comes from ourselves. So we need to release that in order to be able to go back to the Two of Swords. And that's by the way, that's my way of reading. Whenever there's a, let's say, a negative card, or a card that necessitates a little bit of work or processing, what I always recommend is to, first of all, look at the cards around it in a reading, in a spread. But if it's a one card pull, then in that case, look at the cards around it in the natural progression of the suit. So you would look at the Two of Swords, and you will look at the Four of Swords. So you need to decide, if you're experiencing a Three of Swords situation, you need to decide whether you really want to give up entirely and take a moment, just take a step back and take a moment of rest, like the Four of Swords, because you cannot do otherwise, okay? Or you want to go back to the Two of Swords, because the Two of Swords is what created the Three of Swords to begin with. You were stuck between a rock and a hard place. You did not have enough information to take a decision, and therefore you feel in the Two of Swords, you feel like you cannot move. And when that goes overboard, that's what happens at the Three of Swords. So if you want to process, if you want to solve the Three of Swords situation, you need to go back one step to the Two of Swords. But in any case, this is the Tarot of the Internal Landscapes, and it is my choice for the Handmade Deck, a deck that's made extra special because of who made it, or a deck that feels particularly handmade. And the next prompt is the Mistletoe Deck, a deck that makes you think about love in the holiday season. And this is my mistletoe. Now, there is something that I have to say before I show you the deck I chose for this prompt. It's not your typical love deck. But then again, you wouldn't watch this channel if you were looking for something typical, at least, you know, not always, because I have my unique take on a lot of things, and it could be completely wrong, and I don't expect it to vibe with everyone, but it is what I believe. It's true, at least for myself. And so my choice is about something that really does make me think about love. But it's not necessarily a cheerful love. It's not necessarily a cheerful deck. And I have posted a deep dive of this deck on my channel. It's the Mio Im's Tarot by Fonsos, New York. So the artist, she's South Korean, she's a tattoo artist actually, and the story goes that she's worldwide famous, but because in South Korea, tattoos can only be done legally, at least legally, by a tattoo artist with a medical degree as well. And there's a reason why there's a lot of tattoo artists from South Korea that actually travel the world, and they do their work from outside of Korea because they don't necessarily need the medical license in different countries. And so Mio Im, the creator of Mio Im, is definitely famous in the US. And I know that she is touring all around the world to give out, tattoos. I'll make sure to put her website in the description box below, because I really believe that her work is absolutely fantastic, also when it comes to illustrations and tattoos. But the reason why I want to talk about this deck, there's two reasons why I want to talk about this deck. First and foremost, because it does make me think about love, and because when you look at a couple of cards in specific, one is the Lover's card and one is the Three of Cups, you will see that there's something quite revolutionary. This is the Three of Cups. Let's just put it aside for a moment because I want to find the Lover's card as well. I hope I just didn't pass it without even realizing it. So this deck is very strong, very powerful. It's, let's say, it's not for the faint of heart. If you watched my deep dive, you will see how intense it can get, and some card for some people can also be very, how should I say this, probably a bit of a trigger. Okay, so I don't want this deck to be making people uncomfortable, and so I'm not gonna point out a few things. But it is a deck that we need. It's a deck that we need because it's one of those decks that you only need one in your collection, but when you have it, you're grateful for it because it really gives you a different kind of take on so many of the cards, that it complements your knowledge. It really gives you the possibility to become a better reader. Now I found the cards, so how are we going to do this? I'm just going to put back some of these ones here just to level it a bit, and then I'm going to show you the two cards that make me think about love in a different way in tarot ever since I've seen them. So assuming that we start from the card on the right, this is the Lover's card and this is the Three of Cups. What can we see, when we look at these cards? This one is a card that clearly shows me a living person with flesh and blood putting their hands on the ground, and they have a string that is attaching their little finger to the little finger of someone else who is not alive anymore. It's a skeleton. The hand is the hand of a skeleton. There are rings as well, but what I like about this is this string that really bonds them. It's attaching their fingers, and it bonds them and represents the bond in a very unequivocal way. What I think it's revolutionary is the fact that we have a bond that goes beyond time, and it's a bond that goes beyond death. When I was doing the deep dive, I got a lot of comments from people saying that they actually didn't think about it this way, and that it was a bit of a discovery hearing that from me. And I don't think that everyone agrees to that, but there is something that is actually a fact. There is no, let's say, there are a few exceptions, but generally speaking, there are no laws, nor religions that keep the bond, that expect you to keep a bond with your partner after death, beyond death. When you look at religion, when you look at laws, a person whose partner dies, they're not bonded to them anymore by law, and by religion is always the usual sentence is till death do us part. Recognizing that death is something that is freeing the bond. So let's say cutting off the string that is attaching these two. But this person is not alive anymore. This one is, we assume at least that this one is, and this one isn't. So this bond is still there because the string is still attached and it's not broken, it has not been cut. And so that is something that is very powerful and intense. A way for me to look at a bond that is actually transcending not just time, because that could be love in general, but also death. Now, the first time in which I thought about love transcending physics is when I watched Interstellar. If you watched the movie, you may have liked it or not, and I also know that you may have liked it for different reasons, and that's absolutely fine. But I know that a few of you would have kind of meditated on what the message is, that love transcends the law of physics. There is something that we will never be able to put down in a series of numbers and equations and algorithms, and that is love. And it is because of love that, sorry about the spoiler, but if you haven't watched the movie yet, it's probably 10 years ago. It was released at least 9.5 years ago. So if you look at the movie, the protagonist is saved. The situation is completely desperate. Okay, he's gone. Okay, he's gone. He's completely gone. And yet, there is a redemption. He finds salvation, and the way in which he finds salvation is thanks to love. In this case, it's the love between him and his daughter. So it's not a romantic relationship, but it's love nonetheless. And it's probably one of the strongest bonds ever. And I think this is such an incredible way to look at love. And then what happened was that I was doing the deep dive and I looked at the Three of Cups, and whilst I was filming, I immediately saw what happened here. So this is the same hand, and this is also the same hand. It's basically the same person that has actually moved on at a certain point, even though we can see some kind of tattoos live here and we don't see it here. So perhaps it's not, but what I mean is that the symbology is there. So the person that is still bonded to someone else, even beyond death, can still find love or a different bond in their present lives, but the bond still exists. This is almost as if it were a blessing of acceptance and protection from the person who is not there for us anymore, or there anymore on the face of the earth, because they're dead, but they're still there for us even though we moved on and we formed a new bond with someone else. This is an incredibly powerful way to show love. I really like it, and that's the reason why I chose to show you this deck for the prompt, the Mistletoe. a deck that makes you think about love in the holiday season, because it's not necessarily festive, but it doesn't have to be. And I absolutely love these two cards together. And now we only have 2 prompts left. So the next one is the Fairy Light deck, a deck that sparkles. And I had to go with the Magical Spirit Oracle by Alexis Raccoon, and it's the Brilliance of You. It's a Rock Ball release. It's actually rather recent. I think it's only been released maybe a couple of months ago. It's a beautiful deck, but I don't see it around much. I don't know why, because it's actually very, very beautiful. It's gorgeous. I mean, the art style, the colors, the messages, the keywords. Perhaps the only thing that people don't necessarily like about this deck are the slightly larger borders than what we're used to. But to be honest with you, you can easily fix that. I mean, you can decide to trim it back a little bit, like not entirely off, because you do have keywords and, you know, very important messages at the bottom of the cards, but you can still fix it if that really bothers you that much. There is a way to fix that. That's what I wanted to say. I have not seen this deck around, and yet this deck has got sparkle in each and every card. So you got sparkle in the, for example, in the hair, you got sparkle in the background, on the sky, you got sparkle on the background of the numbers, you got sparkle in front of the books. There's sparkle in each and every card, and I love this deck for it. It could just as easily be called the Sparkle Oracle, because really, literally, there is not one single card that does not have, you know, an element of sparkle, whether that's referring back to, for example, the fluorescence of the character in this card, or I don't know, the stars, or, you know, just the fact that, for example, you have stars in the background on the numbers there. So that ensures that there's sparkle everywhere. I really like it. I enjoy it. I think that it's one of those decks that is not necessarily easy to pair up with a tarot deck. I think it might pair up really well with the Scorpio Sea Tarot by Maggie Stiefvater, because of the coloring and also because somehow of the artwork. But this is one of those decks that, because it's got a lot of elements to it, so you've got the number, you've got the images, you've got a sentence inside the card, and you've got a title, and you have at least 2 or even 3 sometimes keywords at the bottom. So as you can see, it's got a lot of elements. Sometimes decks that are so rich, let's put it this way, do not pair well with the other tarot decks, because they kind of tend to steal the thunder. But I don't mind using it by itself. I don't mind using it, you know, for a 1-card pool or even 3 cards pool. I love reading the messages, and it definitely really does sparkle, because, you know, the messages are very encouraging. They normalize feeling off sometimes, and I like it because you still feel like you're okay, no matter what you feel, but it's okay. So you're so brave to keep on going the way you do, no matter what you're doing. If you feel like you're failing at something, well, you're still brave at keep on going. I wasn't always like this, you know. I had to create who I am, which is such a powerful sentence to tell yourself, and to basically tell others as well when you're presenting yourself. So I really love this deck. I think it's definitely you know, my favorite pick for the Fairy Light deck, a deck that sparkles. And the last prompt is the Tree Topper deck. Tell me about your tree topper and find a deck that reminds you of it. Now, I know that tree toppers are very different. Like, you can have angels, you can have a comet, you can have a star, you can have Santa Claus. In my case, I have a star. It might sound boring, but I do believe in the healing power of stars. Generally speaking, my favorite card in the Major Arcana is the star card. It's also because it's related to Aquarius, which is my zodiac sign. There's a number of reasons why I really do like the concept of stars. And one deck that I immediately fell in love with when it came out, and it just entered my collection, and then I rehomed it for some reason, because sometimes I just rehome a deck feeling that, you know, I want to want to check whether I can survive without it. I guess I want to test my my dedication to a deck, and then when I realized that I actually miss it because I was actually using it for some purpose, then in that case I reacquire it. And that's exactly what happened for the Star Child Tarot by Danielle Noel. This is the Akashic version, so it's a very let's say for me the size, it's tarot, normal tarot standard, let's say, size and shape. And I have to be honest that this is probably, I chose the Akashic because of that. It's one of the reasons why I prefer this kind of format to the other slightly larger oracle kind of size decks. But I love this deck because when you look at it, you look at the box, you see here it says we are all stardust. Now there is a whole theory about stardust. Personally, I love to read as much as I can about it. It is something that really transports me away into a different world, and that's exactly what this deck does. It reminds me so much of astral travel, for example, or the concept of it, or the concept that we live in one of many possible worlds. And there are parallel worlds with, you know, lives developing in them and just following their sense and their meaning and their own true calling, like we're supposed to do in our lives in this world. I love the idea that we are all stardust because there is the one common thing that makes us all equal. And in one word, by saying stardust, it encompasses so many things. It just generates this idea of looking up at the starry sky at night and wondering how far away the stars are from us, and how ironically or paradoxically how close they feel as well. And that is one of the reasons why I do believe that we are all stardust, because it feels as if we are at home under a starry night, because we are part of the stars as well. There's a lot of books that I like reading with this theory, and one of them is, for example, the Philip Pullman His Dark Materials trilogy. It's three books. It is the concept of dust or stardust is amazing because they talk about the northern lights as well, and you can literally travel between worlds thanks to dust, thanks to the stardust. And it's just amazing. The theory behind it is that when you're a child and you haven't set in your own ways, you haven't been corrupted yet, and you're still back in touch with nature in the purest of forms, your dust, the dust that composes you, the stardust that composes you, is the most powerful dust, and if you use it, that's how you can actually travel between worlds. But obviously, you know, when you grow older, you start being corrupted, you set in your own ways, and that's when, you know, your soul takes a fixed and immutable shape. And this is visualized by having your demon, the soul spirit that always accompanies you, you know, taking a fixed shape as opposed to changing every time, which tend to happen when you're still pure. That kind of books, I don't know, it's really something that I love reading. I love the philosophy behind it. I love all of the concept behind it. And I really like that this deck reminds me of those books so much and those theories so much. And it's something that is, you know, every time that we can study or learn something new that takes us beyond what we are, beyond what we see when we look at the mirror, is something interesting, because it really makes us part of something bigger, and it shows us the way to feel like that. So this is the Star Child Akashic Tarot by Danielle Noel, and it's my choice for the Tree Topper deck. Tell me about your tree topper and find a deck that reminds you of it. And that was the last prompt for today. So thank you so much, as always, for staying with me till the end of this video. More to come. Have a great day.